All right, class, let's dig into Chapter 2, the Constitution. So remember to use these videos as an overview of your chapters and then to reference the textbook along with your note takers to dig deeper and prepare for class. Here we go. All right, so let's look at the political philosophy. We sort of touched on this last chapter, but John Locke's natural rights philosophy, right, states that government's role is to protect our natural rights, which are life, liberty, and property, according to him. The idea is that government rules with the consent of the governed, right? Social contract. All right, we give our consent, and every year we give our consent again to different representatives. Okay, it's called voting. So the United States, it's based on these ideas of limited government, right? We have natural rights, okay, we have popular sovereignty, we have republicanism, and we have the social contract. All of these are at the core of who we are and our government. So political values, all right, remember, like we talked about last time, individualism, equality of opportunity, free enterprise, rule of law, limited government. All of these are part of our political values. So let's look at where all of this came from, starting with the Revolution, okay? The American Revolution represented, all right, the overthrow of one system of government based on widespread popular support, okay? It did not cause widespread societal change, all right, like the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution and the Iranian Revolution, all right? It just overthrew a system of government. So let's look at our first system of government when we declared our independence. It was the Articles of Confederation, and this established a confederation or loose alliance among 13 states. Congress had few powers. There was no president, no national court system. We were a unitary system of government, one branch. Most government power rested in the states. There was no national power to tax. All right, and they needed unanimous approval for any amendment to change the articles. So let's look at the first thing that's really going to challenge us, Shays' Rebellion. This is a series of attacks on courthouses by a small band of farmers led by Revolutionary War Captain Daniel Shays. Okay, they're getting foreclosed on. They can't afford their taxes. The government hasn't paid them for their service in the Revolutionary War. Okay, so the economic elite grow concerned about the article's inability to limit these violations of individuals' property rights. So what are we going to do? We're going to hold a convention. 55 men, 12 of the 13 states, mostly wealthy planters and merchants, all of them white males, college graduates, all right, and many were coastal residents from large cities, not necessarily all the rural areas. So what's going to happen is that they're all going to look at some different things, right? They're going to look at human nature, all right, is self-interested. Political conflict leads to factions, an important word that you need to know. Objects of government include preservation of property. This is really big, okay? The Constitution is an economic document as well. And the nature of government sets power against power, okay, so that no faction can rise above anyone else and overwhelm them. So let's look at what happens. At the convention, we're going to have some compromises. And one of them that's really important is the Great Compromise. You guys need to know this. We have the New Jersey plan, right? New Jersey, everything's legal in New Jersey. Remember that it's a small state, okay? Very small. Then we have the Virginia plan, large state. So we have small versus large. New Jersey, they want one House legislature, just like the articles already have, unicameral, equal representation in Congress, because they're small, so that gives them power, all right? And supported by smaller states, because if you go and you take away this equality within the legislative branch, you're going to take away small states' powers because they don't have the population to compete with people like Virginia. They want a two-house legislation. They want representation to be based on population. Okay, this obviously is supported by larger states because they have larger populations. It would give them more power. All right, so the Great Compromise, also known as the Connecticut Compromise, is going to come in, and they're going to have a two-house legislature, okay? They're going to have one of these chambers. The Senate is going to be based on equal representation, and then you're going to have the House, which is going to be based off of population, okay? This is a bicameral system. All right, we're also going to have the 3/5 compromise. Okay, this is the idea that slaves are not necessarily mentioned in the Constitution. All right, but there's a reference to them as not free. Okay, and what it's going to say is that slaves count as 3/5 of a person for purposes of taxation and representation. Part of this debate was Virginia wanted them to count towards population, and the North said, well, if you claim their property, but yet you want them to count as people, then we get to tax you on them. So that's part of this whole compromise. Okay. The other thing that they're going to compromise on is the idea that nothing can be done about the importation of slaves, all right, or slavery itself until 1808. It's kind of going to be put on the back burner. Okay. And that voting requirements were left to the states, which, if you study history, you know, basically falls to white, male landowners. All right. Economic issues during this time. Okay. All right. My boy Hamilton on the $10 bill there. All right. States are placing tariffs on products from other states. This is causing problems. Okay. Paper money is being created in different states, which is basically making it worthless. And Congress can't tax under the Articles of Confederation. So huge problems. States are running crazy doing tariffs. All right. The money is not worth anything, and Congress can't raise a dime. So let's look at what happens. Okay. Congress is going to, at this convention, decide that they should have the power to levy taxes. All right. By doing that, they can pay debts. All right. If need be, they can borrow money from foreign countries. Okay. They have the power to coin money, right? Regulate interstate and foreign commerce. Okay. So states can't be putting tariffs on other states' goods anymore. Establish uniform laws of bankruptcy, punish pirates because they were actually a problem during this time. Take a history class. Punish counterfeiting. Okay, create standard weights and measures. So, yep, it's Congress's fault that we're like the only country in the world not on the metric system. Establish post offices, all right, and protect copyrights and patents. Huge things. All right, but don't worry, we're going to give states some powers too. All right, but we're also going to limit some stuff with them, right? Like they cannot tax imports and exports from other states. Not working. Can't do that. Okay. States cannot require payments of debts in paper money because there's a little problem with Rhode Island during this time that we'll read about later in class. All right. So these are some of the key economic things put into the Constitution. All right. So rights in the Constitution. This is big. Okay. A few individual rights were written into the Constitution, and Hamilton is going to argue this at great length in the Federalist Papers. All right. That it prohibits the suspension of writ of habeas corpus, which is the right to know what your charges are if you're arrested by the government. Okay. No bills of attainder. Okay. Which means that legislation cannot declare someone guilty without a trial. All right. No ex post facto laws, which basically says, hey, a crime, something was done that we don't agree with. Let's pass a law and say that's a crime. And now let's go arrest and charge that person. Okay, we're going to say that's a no-go. All right. And then religious qualifications for holding office. So we can't say, hey, only Christians, hey, only Catholics, hey, only Protestants, hey, can't do that. Okay. We're going to have a strict rule of evidence for conviction of treason. Okay, because treason's kind of a big deal. And when we read the Constitution, you'll see that like death is something that can happen here. So there's some big rules about treason and how it can be proven guilty and the type of evidence needed. And that there's a right to trial by jury in criminal cases. Okay, all of this already in the Constitution. Hamilton. Okay. This is going to be a huge debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, right? And we're going to get to that. So Madisonian model. Definitely need to know this. All right. The idea is that it's to prevent a tyranny over the majority. This is a big thing with him. Okay. We're going to read a lot about this. So what he proposes, all right, is limiting majority control, separating the powers, creating checks and balances, right? Remember Montesquieu, and establishing a federal system. Okay. So the idea would be, right, we would have the president, 4-year term, judiciary, life terms, Senate 6, House 2. Okay. House is represented by the voters. They're elected directly. Senate is elected by the state legislatures. Judiciary is nominated. And the president is awarded the win by the Electoral College. Okay? So we're going to keep state legislatures electing the Senate, right, until 1913 when we get the 17th Amendment, right, and the populists prevail, okay, and the progressives win, and it actually becomes the voters electing the senators, okay? But please know that until 1913, state legislatures, okay, are the ones putting the senator in their position. So the voters only have a say in the House of Representatives. All right. Okay, so again, Madisonian model, right? We have the three branches, right, and all of the different ways that they check each other. Okay, so this is huge. This is really important, right? So Congress can pass a law. The president can veto that law. Congress can override the veto with a 2/3 majority, all right, but not all that common to do, all right? The court can declare things unconstitutional, but the Senate does confirm the nominations to the court, okay? So things like that, checks and balances. All right. Now, when this all comes to light, all right, because remember, to make changes to the Articles of Confederation, they needed unanimous approval, and they don't have it. They just made a whole new government. Okay, we're going to have a divide in the country. We're going to have Federalists, and we're going to have Anti-Federalists. Okay, the Federalists are going to support removing some of these powers from the states and giving them to the national government. Okay, like taxation, kind of a big deal. Tariffs, kind of a big deal. Okay, they favor dividing power, all right, and they propose a single person lead the executive branch. The Anti-Federalists are going to be appalled by this, all right. They want important political powers to remain with the states. They want the legislative branch to have more power than the executive, all right. They fear that a strong executive is going to just become another king or a tyrant. And they believe a Bill of Rights is needed to be added to the Constitution in order to protect everybody's rights. Okay. All right. So to ratify the Constitution, there's going to be a series of Federalist papers written. Now, side note, all of these papers were written directly for New York. New York State was the one that was in debate whether to ratify the Constitution or not. They were divided. All of these Federalist papers are written to woo them. Okay. So all my Hamilton lovers out there know it's a collection of 85 articles written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, all underneath the name Publius. Okay. And they're defending the Constitution. All right. Eventually, what's going to come out of this is a negotiation. Okay, and that's going to be the Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution drafted in response to the Anti-Federalist concerns about lack of basic liberties being protected under this new form of government. We're going to read these in class, but just a brief overview. Federalist number 10, right? Madison's going to talk about factions. Factions are self-interested groups. All right, they're adverse to the interests of the community. They only want what's best for them. Factions are sown in the seeds of human nature because, like Thomas Hobbes said, we're all just born greedy and horrible. Well, maybe true. Okay, Federalist 10 is also going to talk about the balances of government prevents the mischiefs of the factions. Okay, Federalist number 10 is all about factions, so be sure that's in your notes. Federalist number 51, both of these written by Madison. Okay, Federalist 51 has my favorite quote, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." Well, we need government. He's going to argue that separation of powers and checks and balances are going to prevent one branch from becoming too powerful. Okay, he's going to argue that a Republican government serves as a check on the power of factions and the tyranny of the majority. Okay, and that dividing powers provides multiple access points for stakeholders. Okay, so lots of people can have voice and say and influence in a Republican government with divided powers. So we're going to get it to ratifying the Constitution. We need 9 out of the 13 states to ratify. Okay, we're lacking a majority support, so the Federalists specified the Constitution be ratified by state conventions and not state legislatures. So take it out of the hands of those people. All right, New Hampshire's approval is the 9th state to ratify, which made the Constitution official. Of course, all of the states did eventually ratify the Constitution, which does give it more backing and support as our country moves forward. Okay, changes to the Constitution, super important. You guys need to know this. All right. The amendment process. So step one is that it's going to be proposed, all right, in Congress, and it's going to have a 2/3 vote in the House, okay, which then it can go and be ratified by state legislatures, all right, in 3/4 of the states, all right, which means it's about 38 states, okay, or it can go 2/3 vote in Congress, and it can go down to being ratified by conventions held in 3/4, all right, of the states. Okay, or it can start with being proposed at a national convention called by Congress when requested by 2/3 of state legislatures, right? And then again, it can go back up to either being ratified by state legislatures or ratified by state conventions. Now, what you need to know, okay, is that the state conventions, all right, has only been used once, all right, and that was to repeal the 18th Amendment. Most every time an amendment has traveled, all right, and it's gone to the state legislatures for 3/4 of a vote on that. So only once did we actually go to state conventions, and again, that was the 21st Amendment to repeal the 18th Amendment. All right, constitutional change. There's an informal constitutional change, right? And this is judicial interpretation. So Marbury v. Madison is the big one of this. It establishes the Supreme Court's power of judicial review. It establishes that the Supreme Court can look at laws or actions of the other branches of government and determine whether they're constitutional or not. Okay? Also, changing political practice or technology, increasing demands on policymakers. All of these are informal constitutional changes. So, the Constitution was ratified to strengthen the powers of the national government. Okay, protection of individual rights is guaranteed later through the Bill of Rights. All right, and formal and informal changes continue to shape our Madisonian system of government. Get these in your notes, update your vocabulary, read and understand the citizen story connected to this chapter. All right, and be sure to answer the questions in your chapter note taker. Until next time.